Hey, congrats to Angie Mocheka. Wow, what great results from educational outcomes in South Africa. We should give all the credit where it's due to Minister 30%. Hey, folks, welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. At 87.3%, the class of 2024 achieves the highest pass rate in the history of South Africa. Remarkable, yes? More than 615,000 learners passed the NSC exams, with 47.8% qualifying for admission to bachelor's studies. That's an increase from 40.9% last year. Great news, eh? Not so fast. Far from good news, the effort to paper over problems means that South Africans are just whistling past the graveyard.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that since Simonstown and Boulders, folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa.
The Daily Maverick headline reads, Matric results show promise but raise critical questions for the future. Indeed, they do raise critical questions for the present as well. The high rate of 87.3% for the pass rate surpasses the previous year, which was just 82.9%. This, according to Basic Education Minister Siviwe Garuba from the Democratic Alliance. Well, press reports focus on the results from the IAB exams administered to less than 20,000 students who are but a fraction of the country's 705,000 learners who took this exam. IAB exams tend to be conducted at private schools where standards are understandably higher than public schools because parents are paying for the education and typically paying attention. Now, either the Daily Maverick's editor or its journalist, Taduxwa Pongweni, take you and I for fools, incapable of cogent thinking. Carrying the water for corrupt elites who rule South Africa, Pongweni or the editor included a section titled Debunking the 30% Pass Myth. This section of the story not only does not debunk anything, it confirms facts many of us have long exposed about the soft bigotry and low expectations of South Africa's ruling elite. On Monday, Deputy Minister of Basic Education Regina Maole cautioned against spreading misleading information about the NSC pass requirements and slammed detractors in the matter of the 30% pass rate. Well, I would be one of those detractors. So, Regina, what say you? In a nutshell, all that needs to be said is that the 30% which people are singing, and it became a nice song, and some are even joining the song without understanding the notes, is not a pass mark in this country, and it has never been and never will be. Okay, all right. Oh, we do understand the notes of the so-called song there, sweetheart. It's you who takes everyone for rubes. The 30% is no myth, it's a fact, one you cannot hide nor rubbish the accurate analysis of this dumbed-down set of education standards. Now, Molly said that any candidate who achieves an aggregate of 30% in all subjects will be regarded as having failed. Well, duh, head of the class for Regina. There's no way about it. It's just as it is. There are myths, fallacies, and misinformation that get carried year after year almost by the same people on this matter. Nope, not myths. Students are testing for a bachelor pass, a diploma pass, or a higher certificate. As you can quite clearly see here, the pass rate includes just 40% in every level. Imagine being 40% proficient in your mother tongue in a country with a dozen official languages. Let's look at each of these levels. You need only achieve 50% in 4 subjects to qualify for university entry, just 40% in 3 subjects for a diploma, and 40% in 2 subjects to pass out of high school. So who really cares about a 30% myth? That distraction is comical. The standards are low, finished and clar. A 30% myth. Kvutch. Hogwash. The deputy minister attempts to divert attention from the government's abysmally low standards with distraction and obfuscation. 30% in any subject should never be a passing mark, let alone only 40% in one's mother tongue. For a candidate to obtain that higher certificate, they must obtain at least 40% mother tongue. There is no compromise. It is language. It's your home language. You speak that language at home, and that's why in South Africa we promote home language teaching. The lie that the government promotes home language learning is a joke. It's not a home language. It's the langue maternelle, or mother tongue. And the government of South Africa not only does not support mother tongue instruction in school, the ANC actively undermines it. The Bella Bill pushes English as the medium of instruction in public schools and private now. And that's the first language of just 6% of South Africans. Learning primarily in a foreign language is challenging, and one reason I decided against attending the Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz when I left the Army in 1987. While my proficiency in German was fluent, it's not the same as attending university. But the problems are more manifest than simply low standards. The matric pass rate soars, but minister sounds alarm on science and math problems, says one headline. Well, South Africa needs highly skilled graduates for the fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence, robotics, genetics. But the number of STEM candidates, science, technology, engineering, maths, has fallen sharply. The total number of full-time students who wrote Matric in 2024 rose to 705,000, but the number of candidates who signed up for maths fell to 255,000, a drop of more than 12,000 from the previous year. Amidst all the backpatting and comical congratulations for former Minister Anzi Motshekga, Minister 30%, a bit of the truth actually slipped out. Basic Education Minister Siviwe Garuba said too many learners were progressing through the school system without mastering fundamental skills in literacy and numeracy. These deficits accumulate over time, limiting our learners' ability to succeed in higher grades and in the gateway subjects of math and science, diminishing their prospects of assessing further education and employment opportunities. Well, here, that's exactly the point. The Democratic Alliance's Garube tried to put a brave face on the state of education, a ministry she inherited just 6 months ago. The class of 2024 has shown extraordinary resilience, said Garuba, referencing challenges such as pandemic disruptions, budget constraints, and social issues like gangsterism and violence, not to mention teen pregnancy or drugs. She likened the learners' perseverance to the protea, a South African flower which thrives in adversity. Yes, these children were indeed handicapped by a totalitarian state that locked them away, denied them adequate resources, and worked against their best interest, yet still met the requirements to pass out of school, regardless how ridiculously low those abysmal standards are. And we've not even addressed the cherry picking by students in schools in selecting easier subjects to boost the outcomes. We all know this happens, but who bothers to point out that a system that permits students to choose what they'll be tested in is fundamentally flawed from the get-go? Now, the minister rounded out her comments with a ludicrous statement followed by honesty. The results underline the growing maturity of the education system, Garube said. Maturity? Were standards this low under apartheid? If so, how many generations of students in South Africa must pass through dumbed-down education standards? It's been 30 years. But she cautioned that the matric pass rate does not tell us about the quality of education outcomes that our schooling system is achieving. It's an important indicator of progress. It simply tells us what percentage of learners who wrote the National Senior Certificate achieved the minimum pass requirements for this qualification. And that's exactly what it is, the minimum pass requirements. Now, not to rain on the parade of thousands, if not tens of thousands, of South African high school students who worked their tails off and learned in the face of many challenges and achieved on these exams to pass out of school. But that doesn't change the fact that the standards are abysmally low. And why is that? Why do the elites in South Africa have such low standards? I mean, in most normal places around the world, 70% is the minimum passing mark. Not 30, not 40, not 50%. I mean, honestly, do you want an engineer who got 55 in math building the bridge that you have to drive over? Do you want a thoracic surgeon in your chest that got 65 in science? I don't think so. I don't. I'm sure you don't. And that's not a knock on South African students. That's a knock on the system that fails them. Hey, before you start throwing darts, about, people live in glass houses, our education is a mess in America too, mostly because centralization and control from above, when education should be handled at the local level by communities that know what their communities need and actually pay for the education of their kids, not distant educators and officials and ministers and department heads who are not close to the ground. That's the bottom line here, folks. That's the bottom line. And the Bella Bill is only going to make things worse in South Africa. South Africa's education system is not preparing South Africans for the fourth industrial revolution. Only a small number of them actually achieve those standards. It's bad when auditors and accounting companies have to hire retired auditors and accountants to teach the university graduates basic math. And that's a true story. That's not fiction. That's not a 30% myth. That's a statement of fact. Go check it out. Many, if not the majority of learners leaving university in South Africa these days are ill-equipped or prepared for what awaits them in the dismal job market. What say you, South Africa? I'm sure the barbs will be coming fast and people will take this as an attack on South Africa. It's anything but an attack. It's a clarion call for parents, for educators, for officials to wake up, increase the standards, and have higher expectations of South African children. Stop dumbing down South Africans. Cheers, folks.